Welcome back to Discover Fort Monroe. Now, this may come as a big surprise, but not everything I filmed gets released. So this week, let's discover some unseen footage from the Fort George archaeological dig. October is National Archaeology Month, and Fort Monroe Authority works hard to preserve the history here. But to protect it, first, we have to discover it.
And today we are going to be showing you the excavations we are doing for Fort George out here at the lighthouse. As you can see, we have opened up a unit here and we are investigating the Fort George remains. Fort George was the brick masonry fort that the British built back in starting around 1728 and roughly finished around 1732. It was built here to protect the colony against the Dutch, and then a big hurricane came in 1749 and destroyed it. So as you can see, we already know that the fort was composed of a pair of walls, an outer wall followed by an inner wall 16 feet away, connected by counterforts. So you can see here is what we think is the outer part of the fort, the outer fort, and then this part over here is the counterfort, and the counterfort would have been used to support the outer wall, and it would have connected to the inner wall, which is approximately where the lighthouse is. Now, the interesting thing that we have discovered is this series of flat stones. We're not 100% certain what that is. It could be a path, it could be a platform. We're not certain, but clearly it intrudes into the wall that's already here.
A big topic amongst the team during this dig was a lack of historical information. That could be anything: notes, maps, or drawings of Fort George. That led to a common theme of discovering more questions than answers.
One of the more important parts of our research was discovering the letter that Dr. Archer wrote to the Virginia Historical Society back in 1847. That's where he wrote a letter talking about how he'd come out with a friend and they had measured the ruins of Fort George that were still on the surface at that time. He measured the brick, he talked about the brick, what they looked like and the mortar and all that, and then he measured the distance between the two walls. And he's the one who told us that there was an inner wall and an outer wall with what he called cribbing in between. So we have been going off of that information, and lo and behold, we're actually able to find the outer wall with one of the counterforts. However, when you measured back, we thought we were going to be able to hit exactly 16 feet the inner wall, because that's what he had said. However, that's actually not the case. It's actually much further away over here. If this is in fact the inner wall, it's actually much further away. So that's the kind of problem with this kind of information, is that we don't know exactly what Dr. Archer's techniques were. We don't know how reliable his measurements were. He was looking at a ruin that had been impacted multiple times by weather events, by other building events. Odds are that those bricks that he found on the surface were not there originally, and he probably wouldn't have known that. He probably just would have assumed that they were there from the last storm. But the fact is that things have been moved multiple times, and as a matter of fact, things have been moved since then. Certainly during the building of Fort Monroe, we have notes where the engineers talked about and complained that they were running into bricks that they thought were associated with earlier forts, and that was slowing their progress down. So that's giving you a pretty good idea of how large the fort was, because the counterfort is all the way back there. It's very, very interesting. It's not quite exactly what we thought was going to happen, but that's why we do the excavations, because you're not going to know the truth until you stick a shovel in the ground.
I hate to leave you with so many questions. It has that same kind of frustration when you watch those unsolved mystery shows, but unfortunately we find ourselves in the same position in our goal to learn more about Fort George. Make sure you're following us, that way next time we can see more unseen footage of the dig from Fort George.